Did you know that over 60% of people struggle to say no, even when it jeopardizes their own well-being? Studies reveal that this inability often stems from societal pressures, fear of conflict, or a deep-seated desire to be liked. The consequences can be devastating: burnout, chronic stress, and a profound sense of losing oneself in the service of others. I was one of those people. My life used to be a storm of endless obligations. I worked tirelessly at my job, often putting in late hours because I didn't want to let anyone down. At home, I was the go-to person for every family crisis, every friend in need, every PTA meeting, and every fundraiser. To most people, it looked like I had it all together, a picture-perfect life of someone who cared deeply for others. But on the inside, I was crumbling. It started subtly, as these things often do. A weekend project at work that I agreed to because my boss said it was important. A friend who needed help moving on the same weekend. A cousin asking me to babysit at the last minute. Each time I said yes, I told myself it was no big deal. What was one more task, one more favor? But each yes came at a cost, a little bit of my energy, a piece of my peace. Soon, my calendar was packed to the brim. I rarely had time to eat properly or rest. My sleep became shallow and fitful. I began waking up with a tightness in my chest that wouldn't go away, a constant nagging feeling that I was falling behind on life even as I ran myself ragged trying to keep up with everyone else's needs. But the breaking point came one cold winter evening. I had just finished a long day at work and was driving to a friend's house to help with their party planning. My phone buzzed, my sister needed advice on a personal issue, and my coworker was texting about another project. As I juggled these conversations at a red light, I suddenly felt overwhelmed by a wave of exhaustion so powerful that tears began streaming down my face. I pulled over and sobbed in the car for what felt like hours. I couldn't take it anymore. I was giving and giving, and there was nothing left for me. I realized that I had spent years prioritizing everyone else's happiness while my own needs were barely an afterthought. I didn't even know who I was outside of my obligations to others. And yet, even as I sat there crying, part of me felt guilty for wanting a break. What kind of person was I if I couldn't handle the demands of life? What if people stopped liking me if I started saying no? The thought terrified me. But something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, running on empty, resentful, and broken. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. Every time someone asked for my time, my instinct was to agree without question. My mind screamed at me to be the dependable, helpful person I had always been. But the weight of my exhaustion forced me to pause. There was one particular moment that stands out. A friend called and asked if I could help them decorate their new apartment. I remember holding the phone, my heart racing, the word yes on the tip of my tongue. But then I thought about the stack of unfinished work waiting for me at home, the aching in my back, and how desperately I needed just one quiet evening to myself. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "I can't." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I was convinced they were angry, disappointed, or worse, no longer interested in being my friend. But then they simply said, "Okay. I understand." I hung up, stunned. It felt strange, almost alien, to put my needs first. Yet, for the first time in years, I felt the tiniest spark of relief. Still, the journey was far from over. Saying no wasn't easy, and the guilt didn't vanish overnight. Each no was a battle against the part of me that feared rejection. Each no came with second-guessing and anxiety. But with every boundary I set, I began to reclaim a little more of myself. I learned to recognize the warning signs of burnout, the racing thoughts, the heavy chest, the overwhelming dread of opening my inbox. I began to understand the cost of constantly saying yes, not just to my health, but to my relationships and passions. I had spent so much time giving that I hadn't noticed how my connections with others had become hollow, built on a foundation of obligation rather than genuine care. Slowly, I started prioritizing my well-being. I carved out moments of stillness in my chaotic days. I relearned how to say no without apology, without guilt. I realized that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary. It allowed me to show up for the people I cared about with a full heart, not a depleted one. But make no mistake, this was a painful transformation. There were moments when people didn't understand my newfound boundaries, when they pushed back or questioned my choices. I lost some relationships along the way, which hurt deeply. But I also discovered something beautiful. The people who truly cared about me respected my limits. They valued me for who I was, not just what I could do for them. Today, my life looks very different. My calendar has more white space. My mind feels clearer. I wake up with a sense of peace instead of dread. I've rebuilt my relationships, not as a people pleaser, but as someone who loves and respects herself first. If you've ever felt like you're drowning in the expectations of others, if you've ever lost yourself in an endless cycle of saying yes when your heart screamed no, I want you to know that you're not alone. There is a way out. The solutions to this struggle took me years to uncover, and they changed my life in ways I never thought possible. But that story, the how, is one for another time. The weight of my experiences still lingers in my memory, though it has transformed into something I now cherish. It's a reminder of just how far I've come and how easy it is to slip into a life dictated by the desires and expectations of others. If you've been there, if you've felt the crushing exhaustion of carrying everyone else's burdens while neglecting your own needs, you understand how deeply isolating and overwhelming it can feel. There were times when the pressure consumed me. I recall one particularly vivid evening when I found myself alone in my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, utterly drained. My phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, texts and emails and social media notifications piling up. Every single one was a call to action. Someone needed me. Someone was asking for my time. Someone thought I could do more, give more, be more. It wasn't just the fatigue, it was the suffocating sensation that I couldn't escape, that my life wasn't even my own. I had given pieces of myself away to so many people that there was nothing left for me. I wasn't just physically tired. I was emotionally empty, hollowed out by the constant demands and my inability to say the one word that could have saved me, no. That word felt impossible, almost forbidden. I convinced myself that saying no was unkind, selfish, even cruel. What if I let someone down? What if I ruined a relationship? What if people saw me differently, not as the kind, reliable person I wanted them to see, but as someone who was cold or unhelpful? These fears held me hostage. They whispered in my ear every time I tried to set a boundary. When my boss handed me an impossible workload, the fear told me to smile and agree. When my friend asked for a favor, the fear convinced me to push aside my exhaustion. When my family leaned on me for emotional support, the fear persuaded me that my needs could wait just a little longer. But just a little longer turned into years. Years of ignoring my own needs, of sacrificing my well-being to meet everyone else's expectations. I remember vividly the turning point. One day, my body decided it couldn't keep up anymore. I had spent weeks juggling a high-stakes project at work, managing a family crisis, and helping a close friend plan their wedding. My schedule left no room for rest. Every hour was accounted for. Every ounce of energy was drained from me before the day even began. Then, one morning, I woke up and couldn't get out of bed. It wasn't just physical exhaustion, though my body ached in ways I didn't think were possible. It was the crushing weight of it all, the endless demands, the constant expectations, the overwhelming pressure to keep going no matter what. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, unable to move, unable to face another day of giving myself away. For hours, I just lay there, tears streaming down my face. I thought about everything I had given to others, everything I had sacrificed, and everything I had lost. I thought about the friendships I had neglected because I was too busy helping people who barely noticed my efforts. I thought about the hobbies I had abandoned because there was never enough time for me. I thought about the dreams I had given up on because I was too busy making everyone else's dreams come true. That day was my breaking point. It was the moment I realized that something had to change, that I couldn't keep living like this. But even then, the idea of saying no felt impossible. It wasn't something I could do overnight. It wasn't something that came naturally. The weeks and months that followed were some of the most challenging of my life. Learning to say no felt like learning a foreign language, awkward, uncomfortable, and terrifying. Each time I said no, I was consumed by guilt. Each time I set a boundary, I second-guessed myself. Each time I put my needs first, I worried that I was disappointing someone or damaging a relationship. But I kept going, step by step, no by no. And slowly, things began to change. It wasn't just my schedule that became lighter, it was my soul. With every boundary I set, I felt a little freer. With every no, I reclaimed a piece of myself that I had given away. I started to see my own worth, not as someone who was always available or always accommodating, but as someone who deserved love and respect simply for being me. I won't lie to you, there were losses along the way. Some people didn't understand my boundaries. Some relationships faded. But what I gained was so much more valuable. I gained clarity, peace, and the ability to truly enjoy the moments I chose to say yes to. Today, I wake up with a sense of purpose and calm. My time is my own, and I give it freely to the people and causes that matter most to me. I've learned that saying no doesn't make me unkind or selfish, it makes me strong. It allows me to show up fully for the people I love and the life I want to live. If you've ever felt trapped in a cycle of people-pleasing, if you've ever lost yourself in the endless demands of others, I want you to know that you're not alone. And while the journey to reclaiming your life isn't easy, it's one of the most important journeys you'll ever take. This story is my truth, but it's also a mirror, a reflection of the struggles so many of us face. The struggle to set boundaries. The struggle to prioritize our own well-being. The struggle to find the courage to say no. And while the solutions are hard-earned and transformative, those are stories for another day. For now, I hope my journey resonates with you and reminds you that change is possible, even when it feels like you've given everything away. After the day I couldn't get out of bed, my journey toward healing began. It was not swift or easy, and it required dismantling the very habits and beliefs that had ruled my life for years. I had to learn how to say no, not just as a word, but as an act of self-respect, a declaration of my worth, and a boundary for my own well-being. The first step was acknowledging that I needed help. Up until that point, I believed asking for support was a sign of weakness. I thought I had to carry every burden alone to prove my strength. But in reality, the weight was unbearable. I reached out to a therapist, a decision that changed everything. During our first session, I poured out my story. The overwhelming demands, the guilt, the resentment, and the crushing exhaustion. My therapist introduced me to a concept that felt foreign yet liberating, setting healthy boundaries. She explained that boundaries weren't walls to keep people out, but frameworks to protect my energy, my time, and my mental health. She told me something that stuck with me: saying no to others is saying yes to yourself. I started small because saying no still felt daunting. I practiced with safe situations, declining invitations to events I didn't truly want to attend or saying I needed to check my schedule before committing to anything new. Each small success made the next step easier. I began prioritizing my tasks and identifying what truly mattered to me. Was I doing something because I wanted to or because I felt obligated? This question became my compass. One of the most challenging parts of this process was addressing the guilt. Every time I said no, I wrestled with the fear that I was letting someone down or being selfish. But with time and practice, I began to see that guilt was not a reflection of wrongdoing. It was a reflection of unlearning habits that no longer served me. I also learned to communicate my boundaries clearly and respectfully. For example, when someone asked for a favor, I stopped over-explaining or offering excuses. Instead, I would simply say, "I can't commit to that right now, but I hope it goes well." I realized that I didn't owe anyone a detailed justification for my choices. Support from my close friends and family became invaluable. At first, some didn't understand why I was changing. They were used to the old version of me, the one who was always available, always saying yes. But as I explained my need for boundaries, most of them were supportive. Some even admitted they struggled with the same issues and felt inspired to make changes themselves. I also leaned heavily on mindfulness practices to reconnect with myself. Meditation became a daily ritual where I could tune into my emotions and needs. Journaling helped me process my thoughts and reflect on the progress I was making. These practices reminded me that my well-being was worth prioritizing and that I didn't have to feel guilty for taking care of myself. One of the most transformative moments came during a work meeting. My boss assigned a new project to me, even though I was already stretched thin. My instinct was to agree and figure out how to make it work later. But I took a deep breath and said, I'm currently at capacity with my current projects, but I'd be happy to take this on once I've wrapped those up. The room went silent, and my heart raced. But then my boss nodded and said, "Thanks for letting me know. We'll assign it to someone else for now." That moment was a revelation. I had advocated for myself, and the world didn't collapse. The more I practiced, the more confident I became in setting boundaries. I started to notice how my life was changing. My anxiety decreased. My sleep improved. I had more time to focus on the things that truly brought me joy: reading, spending time in nature, and connecting with loved ones. I was no longer running on empty. Through this journey, I discovered something profound. Saying no isn't just about refusing requests. It's about reclaiming your time and energy to invest in the things that matter most. It's about showing up for your own life with intention and purpose. The turning point in my transformation came when I discovered the power of saying no, set healthy boundaries, and prioritize your well-being. This book became my guide and my companion in the process of reclaiming my life. The practical advice and relatable stories resonated deeply with me. It wasn't just about learning to say no, it was about understanding why I struggled to say it in the first place and finding the courage to rewrite my narrative. One chapter in particular struck a chord with me. It detailed how people-pleasing often stems from a fear of rejection and how to overcome that fear by building self-confidence. The exercises in the book helped me identify my triggers and gave me the tools to respond in healthier ways. Another chapter explored the psychology of guilt and taught me how to distinguish between real guilt and the false guilt of prioritizing my own needs. The book wasn't just theory, it was actionable. It guided me step by step through the process of setting boundaries and embracing the freedom that comes with them. Each page felt like a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this struggle and that change was possible. If you've ever felt trapped in the endless cycle of overcommitting, if you've ever struggled with guilt or fear when trying to say no, I can't recommend the power of saying no enough. This book helped me transform my life in ways I never thought possible. It's not just a guide, it's a gift to anyone ready to reclaim their time, energy, and well-being. Take the first step toward your transformation. Grab a copy of The Power of Saying No, set healthy boundaries, and prioritize your well-being today. You deserve it. The process of fully transforming my life after reading The Power of Saying No wasn't immediate, it was a gradual but rewarding climb. As I turned each page, I felt a deeper understanding of not just what boundaries were, but why they were vital for my happiness, health, and relationships. One of the first actionable steps the book suggested was creating a priority map. This involved listing the things that mattered most to me and identifying where my time and energy were actually going. It was a painful realization to see how little of my life was spent on the things that brought me joy. Work, obligations, and favors for others had consumed nearly every waking moment, leaving me with no time to nurture my own passions or rest. But with this map in hand, I began to reshape my life. The book explained that the key to saying no wasn't just refusing things, it was aligning your yes with your core values. When I understood that saying no to something unimportant was really saying yes to something meaningful, the guilt started to lift. For example, a friend invited me to a weekend getaway I didn't want to attend. In the past, I would have gone, fearing I'd disappoint them. But this time, I thought about my priorities. I had been longing to spend that weekend with my partner, reconnecting after weeks of being consumed by work. I gently declined my friend's invitation, offering another time to catch up. The result? I had an unforgettable weekend with my partner, strengthening our bond while still maintaining my friendship. The book also emphasized the importance of setting clear boundaries at work, a challenge I'd struggled with for years. I used to think that being a good employee meant always saying yes, even when it meant sacrificing my personal time or well-being. But the power of saying no reframed this for me, teaching that boundaries are actually a sign of professionalism and respect for yourself and your work. One tool that changed everything was learning to set non-negotiables. I started small by carving out 1 hour every evening as my time, no matter what. That hour became sacred, a chance to recharge, reflect, or simply breathe. Whether it was reading, taking a walk, or meditating, that hour was untouchable. Initially, there were pushbacks. Colleagues would call or text during that hour, expecting me to respond immediately. In the past, I would have dropped everything to address their concerns. But this time, I let the messages wait until the next morning. The surprising result? Nothing fell apart. The world didn't end. And slowly, people began to respect my boundaries. The hardest part of this journey was addressing my relationships. Some people in my life thrived on my availability and willingness to always say yes. When I started setting boundaries, a few of these relationships became strained. I had to come to terms with the fact that not everyone would understand or support my growth, and that was okay. One particularly difficult moment came when a close friend confronted me, upset that I wasn't as present as I used to be. They accused me of changing, of becoming selfish. Those words stung deeply. But instead of reverting to my old habits, I calmly explained that I was indeed changing because I needed to. I told them I still valued our friendship but had to prioritize my own health and happiness. Not every relationship survived these changes. Some people drifted away when I stopped overextending myself for them. It was painful, but it also revealed which connections were truly meaningful and reciprocal. The friendships and relationships that remained became stronger and more authentic. Another profound insight from the book was the concept of energy audits. This exercise involved identifying what drained me versus what energized me. It became clear that constantly overcommitting left me exhausted, while spending time on creative projects, meaningful conversations, and self-care brought me joy. With this awareness, I began to prioritize activities and people that aligned with my energy needs. One of the most liberating changes I made was simplifying my schedule. I used to think being busy was a badge of honor, a sign that I was productive and important. But the book helped me see that busyness isn't the same as fulfillment. I started blocking out entire days for rest or unstructured time, something I hadn't done in years. Those days became the foundation for my renewed sense of balance and purpose. Over time, the lessons from the power of saying no transformed not just how I lived, but how I saw myself. I stopped defining my worth by how much I could give or how many tasks I could juggle. I began to value myself simply for who I was, not for what I could do for others. The book also gave me tools to handle the fear of rejection that had haunted me for so long. One chapter, in particular, delved into how to navigate difficult conversations when setting boundaries. It taught me how to speak with confidence and kindness, framing my no as a positive step rather than a rejection. For instance, when a colleague asked me to take on an extra project, I responded, "I appreciate you thinking of me for this, but I'm currently focused on finishing my current tasks. I'm confident you'll find someone else who can give it the attention it deserves." It was firm but respectful, and it worked. As I embraced this new way of living, I noticed a ripple effect. My improved well-being made me more present and engaged in my relationships. My productivity at work increased because I wasn't constantly drained. I had more energy to pursue passions I'd neglected, like painting and volunteering. Looking back, it's hard to believe how much my life has changed. I went from feeling like a prisoner to my obligations to living with intention, clarity, and peace. But I couldn't have done it alone. The power of saying no, set healthy boundaries, and prioritize your well-being wasn't just a book, it was a lifeline. Its practical advice, relatable insights, and actionable steps gave me the tools I needed to transform my life. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, overcommit, or stuck in the cycle of people-pleasing, this book could be the turning point for you too. The lessons I learned didn't just help me say no, they helped me say yes to the life I truly wanted. If you're ready to take that step, I encourage you to grab a copy of The Power of Saying No. It's more than a guide, it's a pathway to freedom, balance, and a life where you come first. You can grab your digital copy at LibriFFY.com by clicking the link in the description. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share this video if you find it very helpful. See you in the next video.